Time now for the 10-minute war here on our first episode of 2022 on Michigan Podcast. And we are joined by our good friend and perhaps the one and only reasonable bucknut out there. Mark Rogers has himself a fantastic channel here on YouTube, the voice of college football. Good to see you, my friend. Happy New Year to you. How are you?
Happy New Year, Steve. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm doing well.
Well, Mark, we laid out at the top of the show, next week we're going to get more into what I think Michigan can do to take the final step now as a program, now that kind of Harbaugh has taken the next step. And then Georgia showed there is still a final step that a program like Michigan has to take. We'll get into what I think Michigan needs to do for the future next week. This week, though, our theme is, hey, don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it actually happened. So let's look at this season as a whole. And I go back to, I think, the very first conversations you and I had about this all throughout the offseason, that I told you that I thought this season would either be Jim Harbaugh's National Coach of the Year or fired. You remember me saying that? That with all the new plate pieces and everything, that either this was all going to hit at once or it wasn't going to land, and either he was going to pull off the Brian Kelly, and that's the only coach I can think of that reinvented himself this deep into a career with a new staff, and it didn't signal that he was canned next. It worked for Brian Kelly. If you look at Notre Dame, had 5 straight double-digit win seasons after that, first time in school history, and now it has worked for Jim Harbaugh. Just your thoughts on this season as a whole and what it means for the Michigan program.
Well, it's an overwhelming success because the Ohio State factory was a juggernaut coming into this season and had everything working its way, going its way, from what was happening on the field to recruiting to the psychology. And Michigan somehow turned that around and made it all work. And many of us, including myself, had kind of questioned, as the success and the wins were piling up throughout the season, how much of it was real because of the backloaded schedule. And then we got our answer, most notably in Ann Arbor on that final weekend of the season, and then to emphatically be able to bounce back. So this is key right here to stage what was the most monumental win for this program in how long? I don't know. I'd let you fill in the blank, 15 to 20 years at least, and then be able to bounce back the following week. Iowa is not a great football team. They are very limited on the offensive side of the ball, but still a top 20 team in the nation. And just to pound them into submission 42-3, that was impressive to me. The offensive identity, I think I've touched upon this before. I am just impressed with how they were able to keep the old and add the new, keep the Jim Harbaugh identity, the Michigan identity, and be able to update it and complement it with explosive plays downfield, with gimmicky type plays, but not turn the offense into that, maintain the Michigan consistency of straight ahead, hard-nosed football on the offensive side.
I thought overall, the buzzword, and it's getting used maybe almost too much in sports now, but when that happens, it's a little bit like the SEC is way overrated. It's still by far the best league, especially at the top at the exact same time, if that makes sense. Okay, I mean, we act like, wow, you can't beat a 6th-place SEC team. Yes, you can. All right. But it is still, I mean, the national championships speak for themselves. The top of that league is a league of its own, without question. At the same time, that is now granted the entire rest of the league some level of papal dispensation that it tiptoes between raindrops when that's not the case. So 2 things can simultaneously be true. The word culture is used too much, and it is still vitally important at the exact same time. I think that's the word of the year. And I think that Jim Harbaugh did something that I think for men in general, for us as a species, is hard, but especially men in this era, with social media and everything else, no one has to be self-aware anymore, Mark. Everybody can gaslight. Everybody can, which is ironic because you're on the record more than any other time in all of human history because of social media, right? Everything you've ever said, thought, we can find a record of it somewhere easier than ever before. And yet people act like there is no advanced search function on Twitter, and, right? There is no such thing as Google. And so there is no self-awareness. It's just gaslighting constantly. And Jim took a long look in the mirror after that disaster last year. I don't think it was entirely altruistic. I think he got a humbling from the NFL when there weren't opportunities to immediately run to head coach the Chargers like maybe he was kind of hoping if he was looking for an eject button. So he got humbled, but let's face it, a lot of leaders don't want to be humbled these days. So give him some credit for allowing himself to accept that humility. He took that deal, which he knew was going to lend itself to 9 months of an offseason of jokes where the Louisiana Tech coach, Skip Holtz, had a tougher buyout than Jim Harbaugh had. And he got it from his former teammate. And I think Ward Manuel was like a freshman when Jim was a captain. So this is his junior. This is his junior. All right. He was the captain over this kid. He's now his boss. He gives him maybe the most notorious haircut of a salary cut in the history of college sports. A lot of people would not have welcomed that, certainly not have accepted it, let alone thrived despite those things. All the different coaching changes that were made, this became one of the youngest coaching staffs in all of the Power Five all of a sudden. And I think that's the thing, is he allowed for a player-led team. We've been wondering as Michigan fans, where's that Michigan culture? Where are the strong captains, the senior leaders, instead of guys sitting out bowl games? I mean, where's the senior leaders at? And I think that it took him a long time to realize, you know what? The problem here really is me. That it's Michigan, even Clemson, which gets away with things from an athletic, shall we say, a compensation standpoint and an academic standpoint. You can't do it in Michigan. Dabo is a huge culture guy. This was the first year they've had any transfers there. He kept the same staff for 10 years, okay? I think Jim realized, you know what? This isn't the NFL. And we've actually got to build a college program here. I need to be more available. I need to be more involved in the lives of my players. I've got to be more open to them. We need coaches that are not just football coaches, but want to be surrogate dads and mentors of men. And I think that's what kind of cracked the code this year, was that. And then I think they went with a scheme where they just did whatever was best for the players they had. And I don't think they've done that in the past. I think in the past it was Jim's system. And then when Jim's system ran its course, then it was, well, let's do with this new, speed and space without even looking at what kind of athletes we have, right? We got Nico Collins and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Those aren't quick twitch guys, okay? And I think this was the year that he both finally decided I needed to be a college football coach, and B, I've actually got to be more merciless. We're just going to do whatever the hell works. So where's the talent on this team? The edge rushers and the running game. So we're going to build everything around those two things, and everything we do will build off of those two things. And I think those were the two big factors in why this was such a stunningly successful year.
We're all familiar with the adage, pride comes before a fall, but few of us are familiar with a lot of adages that are from the Bible and elsewhere that tells us that humility comes before elevation and ascension and moving to successful places in our life. But most of us, based on human nature, don't humble ourselves. We've got to be humbled by the circumstances. The situation has to humble us because we're not going to humble ourselves. And looking at what Jim Harbaugh does and did this past season, as you outline it, what comes to mind is Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. So we're talking about the two most successful coaches, Saban, in Saban's case of all time, arguably. I think we're there at this point to just flat out call him the GOAT. And then with Urban Meyer of the last 20 or 25 years. And
they're the two greatest coaches since the Bear Bryant era, Parsegian era, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Saban's got the national championships. Urban Meyer has the greatest winning percentage in modern college football history post-World War II. Saban has changed with the times, both on the field football, but also the other nuances to the game that you have to have adapted to. He's been able to do that. We see Urban Meyer, after a successful career at Ohio State, go to a situation in the NFL in which you have to adapt. This could have been at any other time in history. It's the pro game versus the college game, and he obviously, by his transgressions and otherwise, didn't learn that lesson. He's unwavering in a negative sense and did not adapt, and therefore failed and was humbled.